Are you ready for the gotcha questions? They're coming from the media and others on foreign policy. Who's the president of Uzbekistan? All of this stuff. It's coming.
Yes.
And how are you dealing with that?
I'm ready for the gotcha questions. And they are already starting to come. And when they ask me who's the president of Uzbekistan, I'm going to say, I don't know. Do you know?
Do they think for a moment that I'm not a student of the position that I see, and that I probably know more about foreign policy than they think? So what I'm saying, Neil, is I hope they continue to think that I am foreign policy dumb. Until the right time, they will find out I'm not as foreign policy dumb as they think.
What is the right time? Foreign policy is not the grounds on which Republicans are choosing their presidential candidate this year. The Uzbekistan guy is, of course, Herman Cain, who is roughly tied for first place right now with Mitt Romney. Like Mr. Cain, Mr. Romney has zero foreign policy experience, but for his team of foreign policy advisors as a candidate, he has brought back most of the George W. Bush foreign policy team, because that worked out so awesome the last time. The only Republican presidential contender with any claim to foreign policy experience is, of course, Jon Huntsman, who was the Obama administration's ambassador to China and who is currently polling at levels measured in individual supporters rather than in percentages. In one recent poll, literally the number of individuals found in Iowa to be supporting Jon Huntsman's candidacy could be counted on one hand. Not the percentage, the people. So, no, American politics and Republican Party politics in particular are not this year about foreign policy. If we were debating foreign policy, though, there would be a lot to debate about. We are at war, of course, in Iraq. We are at war in Afghanistan. We are at war in Libya. And even if we don't call it a war, we are at war intermittently sometimes in Pakistan, in Somalia, in Yemen, now in Uganda, in South Sudan, in the Democratic Republic of the Congo, and the Central African Republic. Last week, President Obama said he was deploying 100 troops as trainers against a militia called the Lord's Resistance Army in those last 4 African nations I just named. Even as this president has wound down or pledged to wind down the wars he inherited from the past administration, he has started a lot of his own wars without much criticism. There's been some criticism on the left and some generalized grumbling, but in the absence of sustained partisan opposition, foreign policy has really gone mostly unsaid, unargued, undebated. But of course, there are exceptions, and right now the exceptions are way weirder than that even weird rule. Last week, for example, conservative talk radio host Rush Limbaugh tried to find a way to criticize the Africa intervention, not by saying intervention itself is a bad thing or that the president was doing it wrong in some way. Mr. Limbaugh's criticism was that the specific militia U.S. troops would be targeting in Africa, that militia, those are actually good guys.
Lord's Resistance Army are Christians. They are fighting the Muslims in Sudan. And Obama has sent troops, United States troops, to remove them from the battlefield, which means kill them. So that's a new war, 100 troops to wipe out Christians in Sudan, Uganda.
I will admit it is true that the Lord's Resistance Army did have the foresight to put the word Lord in their name, but they're not exactly known as a Christian group. They're not like missionaries. They are best known for massacring civilians en masse, tying up men and hitting them in the head with axes, taking women and girls as sex slaves, forcing young boys to become child soldiers. They are considered responsible for thousands of civilian deaths in Central Africa, kidnapping, rape, mass murder, reign of terror, child soldiers, the whole kit and caboodle. But setting aside the astonishing exception of Rush Limbaugh calling those guys good guys because they put the word Lord in their name, is it a blessing or a curse that we do not really have partisan arguments about foreign policy anymore? Republicans don't seem to really have it in them this year. But arguments can be beneficial sometimes. They can pry loose information about what's going on and what might happen next. Right now, for example, the best information we have about Obama's foreign policy does not come from political fights over foreign policy. It comes from journalism. Journalism like Michael Hastings' new scoop in Rolling Stone, which is the most illuminating thing I have read in a long time on how we go to war now in the Obama presidency and why we go to war now. Joining us now for the interview tonight is Michael Hastings, contributing editor for Rolling Stone magazine. His article about the Obama administration's decision to intervene in Libya is in the current issue of Rolling Stone. Michael Michael Hastings, it's great to see you. Thanks for being here, my friend.
Hey, Rachel. Thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
You explain in your piece that the Obama administration is motivated to intervene around the world and sort of justifying intervention around the world by this idea of responsibility to protect. Can you explain that basic idea?
Sure. Essentially, you have a group of influential advisors around the president, and the president himself, who is very interested in this idea of how can you use American foreign policy might to protect innocent civilians in different countries around the world. There was their experience in Rwanda in the 90s and the Balkans in the 90s brought forth this community of foreign policy experts who essentially said, look, we're going to create a doctrine that says if there are innocent civilians at risk in other countries, we have a moral obligation as the international community to intervene.
Do you get the sense that the Obama administration feels any pressure over some of the more controversial things they are doing, even in the absence of partisan arguments over those things? For example, we learned this weekend that after we killed an American citizen, Anwar al-Awlaki, in a drone strike in Yemen, we've also now killed his son, also reportedly an American citizen. The government says he was 21 years old. The family says he was 16. From your reporting on this, does it seem to you like there are high-level struggles in the administration with criticism over things like this?
I don't think the Awlaki issue, there's too much infighting in the administration. I can guarantee you if it was a Republican president doing that, the Democrats would be up in arms. I think that the drone strike in particular has a number of very, very troubling questions to it. But I think politically, as a political issue, the drone strike issue is a winner. I mean, as forget the moral questions for a second. And my personal feeling, too, if the president's foreign policy was going to be focused on humanitarian intervention and these sort of multilateral efforts around the world, say is going in and trying to track down the Lord's Resistance Army, and how Rush Limbaugh did not realize the Lord's Resistance Army is one of the most evil militias in the world. It's like, dude, use the Google. But I think if President Obama kept it to those sort of issues, humanitarian interventions, drone strikes, though people on the left might be more forgiving, the problem is you still have Iraq and Afghanistan that are ongoing, these sort of forever wars. And I think that's the key to the president will be judged in the end on whether he can end those wars successfully.
Well, in terms of what you are reporting on and what you're seeing with the internal decision-making process in the administration, do you see any evolution in where the political weight is on war issues between the president's decision on Afghanistan stay and the decision that he made on Libya? Is the weight, the center of gravity in the administration changing at all?
Oh, I think so. I think that President Obama was burned by the Pentagon in the deliberations over Afghanistan. And what you've seen over the past 2 or 3 years is the president really seizing control of his own foreign policy. On the bin Laden operation and in Libya, you had the president overruling some of his top military advisors going with his gut. So how I like to look at it is if you look at sort of the blank slate foreign policy questions, Libya is one of them, and I said the bin Laden or the Awlaki hit as well. The president has actually done quite well, and he's criticized for this sort of leading from behind, and I don't think that's really true. I think, and the White House will certainly say this, that's actually smart and wise leadership, not leading from behind. But I think the weight is clearly moved from the Pentagon into the Oval Office, but it's been a struggle for him to get there.
The story of that evolution, as told by your piece right now in Rolling Stone, is really well told and fascinating, and I'm not sure anybody else is getting that on national security stuff. So congratulations on this scoop, Michael. It's nice to see you.
Thanks, and I got the book is coming out in January. People in Washington are already running for cover, so I hope to be back.
Hey, do you have a title yet for your book?
It's called The Operators, the wild and terrifying inside story of America's war in Afghanistan.
Who do I have to call to get you on as soon as the book comes out?
Just give me a call or text me, or we'll do a lip reading thing too, and we'll see how it goes. All
right, we'll do it lip reading video style. Excellent. Thank you, Michael Hastings. Appreciate it.
Thanks a lot for having me.
Michael Hastings, of course, a contributing editor for Rolling Stone magazine. Okay, best new thing in the world is still ahead. It is as funny as shagging parrots. That's all I'm saying.